Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. I'm Stu Hardy, fresh from my bunker in Algonquin National Park, and I am joined by Derek Brissett. Derek, did you miss me?
No.
All right, that's it for the podcast. Thank you for...
Not at all. Not at all. Go back.
Okay, two things I should probably clarify and mention. One, I was not hiding out in a bunker in Algonquin National Park. I did not feed any information to the New England Free Jacks. What actually happened was my family came to visit from the UK, and obviously I don't get to see them that much, so I decided to spend time with them. They, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you view it, flew in at the exact same time as the Toronto Arrows versus New England Free Jacks game. So I had to meet them at the airport. Couldn't really get around that. The following week was we went away for the weekend to a cottage, so couldn't get the Seattle game. And then finally, when they come back, the Arrows are playing in New Orleans, which is very rude of them. So I'll blame them on that one.
Oddly convenient that you were at an airport after giving away the secrets of the Arrows to the Free Jacks.
I stayed in Toronto. You could have come and found me at any time.
And then, James said, you ended up at a national park after. So I mean, we weren't wrong.
The college was not in a national park. I don't know where you get your information from, but it's all libel and slander from my side.
Oh, I mean, hey, like you're the one that was gone. You were picking against the Arrows while you weren't here.
I'll get to that in a minute. I also want to say a huge thank you to James Dealey for filling in whilst I was away. Definitely been enjoying hearing him on the podcast, as well as Derek, obviously. But let's get into it.
Because you're wearing a Leaf jersey, and as a local Toronto sports podcast, we cannot go on any further, even though it's not technically related to rugby, without mentioning the fact that the Leafs, after 19 years, have finally made it out of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is immediately like a top 10 great Toronto sporting moment of my life, because quite frankly, we do not have a lot to pick from. So this is excellent. We got to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
John Torres, OT winner. That was sweet.
Absolutely. One sporting curse ends as another seems to be continuing. And by that, I'm referring the Arrows' ever-growing injury list and
oh my god,
personnel. So shall we get into it? Let's talk about.
Now we'll get into the game.
Let's talk about the battle in the Bayou. The old rival, NOLA Gold. Last season, despite injury concerns and whatnot, it was a double victory for the Arrows that season, a 1-point margin first, and then a blowout win in Toronto. This year, however, injuries have come into play. NOLA, they've been pretty good this season, but they haven't been, as great as they have been hoping to be. But let's get into the game itself. It started off with scoring done by the Gold themselves, getting a try early within the first 10 minutes, I think within the 6th minute. And then one of the tries that was highlighted on the MLR social media accounts was the try that ended up being scored by Canadian Eric Howard in the 11th minute. And, just outside the post to give Richie Ioana kick at goal. So Jay Duplessis and Eric Howard getting the scoring side immediately 14-0 up. And that seemed to have come from a blunder from the Arrow, a defensive error. So the irony being is that when Toronto first scored, it was from a NOLA Gold error, just very strange passing option that left it wide open for Mitch Richardson to catch. And then he had the, afterburners on. The Gold tried to come after him, but there was no chance whatsoever. Richardson between the sticks for an automatic 7, immediately back into the game. No tries to be scored for the rest of the opening half, but Shane O'Leary did get a penalty. So at halftime, it was NOLA 14, Toronto 10. And then shortly after the second half, we get Lalani Faleva jumping over the line and getting the ball down. O'Leary converts it, and suddenly Toronto are in the lead. And what has happened to NOLA? You know, they were doing so well in the opening 10, 11 minutes, and then it just seemed to fade away. And yeah, and as the phrase go, it was a game of two halves. So NOLA really good in the first 10 minutes of the first half, and then bit naff for the remaining 30. And in the second half, they were a bit naff for the first 30, and then great for the bit naff for the first 10, and then great for the remaining 30 minutes, because they had 4 tries scored by, first of all, Jackson Hope got in the 50th minute. Then it was Harmon in the 60th, Wheeler in the 67th, Karoy in the 71st minute, and so I think it was Hopes that was a automatic 7, as well as Duplessis, I should say. Ioana was able to get another conversion. Stevens even stepped up to kick for Karoy's try. And then, similar to the game against Seattle, it was like right at the death, the Arrows were able to get a final score to put a final statement on the match. And, the whistle blew. The whistle blew after O'Leary's conversion, and the final score: NOLA 40, Toronto 24. I know I haven't been doing the podcast for a couple of weeks, but it just seems as though it's the same old story, really, for the Arrows this season. I know there's been, the ever-growing injury list. I think
which got way longer this week too.
Well, it started off with only, with the exception of the 2 guys who are out for the season. I think it's only like 10 names total, so 8 names on the injury list. A lot of guys are healthy again, but they weren't available to be in action because you can only take so many players on the plane down to NOLA anyway. But yeah, a couple of big hits that left Mitch Eady.
Yeah, Eady left. Goodall left.
Yeah.
As Noel Reed left toward the end of the game, or looked pretty beaten up. Simonton had to get an HIA early in the game too.
Yeah,
but he passed that, so he kept playing. Yeah. But yeah, and it's like and I mean, honestly, at this point, like, who knows how banged up everybody else is, or what guys are trying to play through at this point too. It just seems it just seems like every time something kind of positive happens for the Arrows, something negative just comes right back, and it seems to usually be in the form of an injury to somebody right now.
I was saying about the injury list, saying that Travis Larson was off it and he was on the bench. He was called into action far earlier because he was replacing Eady. Goodall was replaced by Fatorik. And, even Lucas Rumble was off for a few minutes. James O'Neill coming on for just a bit. And
I think that was just a blood sub, though.
Yeah, but, as in, of all the injuries you can have, none would be best. But, yeah, I get what you mean. But and because of the ever-growing injury list, it seems to be the same pattern. Like, we saw it against Utah, as well. We saw it against Seattle last week, is that the Arrows will play for a certain amount of time before tiredness or fatigue sets in, and they're not running as quickly, their tackles are not as strong, or they're like missing tackles as well, and at that point the floodgates open. Like, Jackson Hope scored in the 50th minute, but Harmon, Wheeler, and Karoy's tries were all within the space of 10 minutes after the 60-minute mark.
Yeah.
And it's like, the Arrows, they were 14-0 down at the start, and they came back to take the lead, and then they got a try at the end. And I'm like, that's all well and good from a morale point of view. But the fact is that in the past 4 games, 3 of which have been at home, the Arrows have only 2 points to their name. Now, I know I had mentioned to you before that if the Arrows conceded 5 games or more than 5 games, they weren't going to be making the playoffs. And I think that was the game against New York, which, there was a lot of positives, but I'll talk about New York when we get to the other MLR games as well. But obviously, the result against New England, that's pretty conclusive. The result against Seattle, everything's now come together. It's the perfect storm. And even though mathematically the Arrows could make the playoffs, it is also on the standing that every Eastern Conference team loses every single game going forward. And unfortunately, they have to play the other Eastern teams, which means even if they have a 0-0 draw, they still get 2 points. So it's one of these things that, especially because I messaged you after the New England result and saying, like, maybe it is a case that we just say, right, slack off this year. We know things are out of our control. Injuries are piling up. It ain't great. What we should be doing now is knowing which guys we want to have back next year, like having that conversation with them now and saying, have you considered investing in a bodysuit made of cotton wool for the off season just to be safe? But at the same time, being like, we want this guy back next year. We want this guy back next year. And if they're healthy, giving them game time. I don't think the Arrows are going to go 1-15 this season. I think when we get towards the end, let me just check. So the game against San Diego, which is definitely towards the end, isn't it? It's one of the last home games they have this year.
It's like mid-June. Yeah. It's next Academy doubleheader too.
Yeah. Well, so I'll be there. Will be there for an Academy game this season. But also at that point, San Diego, who's doing incredibly well in the West, may have already qualified for the Western Conference Final. They may be first place, nothing to worry about. They could send over a bunch of, younger guys, get them out, and then they can focus, because they'll be focusing on the conference finals. So say, okay, we'll have Nonu on the bench. We'll have, a couple of our academy, in the same way the Arrows have got their high performance academy guy, the guys who are in the academy but also can be called up to the main team. They'll be like, San Diego will be like, okay, we'll have those guys in, and then the Arrows can be like, bam, we can get a win. It doesn't affect San Diego at all. San Diego can even try new things, and if it's like, oh, that resulted in an intercept try against us, doesn't matter, we're already top of the West. So yeah, I think the Arrows can get like a few more wins. Obviously, as well, it depends. We had the issue last year with scrum halves being replaced every time the wind blew a different direction. But it is just heartbreaking to see, because it is a case of there is nothing we can do about these players. They are just getting injured. We have a curse somewhere. We need to call in an exorcist or whatever, and do it for all the jerseys, not just the number 9 this time. But yeah, I think from a organizational perspective, it's now said, like, who's going to be here for 2024? Who do we want here for 2024? If those guys are fit and able to play, let's give them the game time against ATL, against DC, against New England. And then we'll decide what's going on with Houston, San Diego, and NOLA.
Okay, so I agree with part of what you're saying. I disagree with some other parts there. It's definitely, if you're Tim Matthews, you're thinking, you have to be thinking about next year. You're probably thinking about next year a long time ago. Right, for like a couple reasons, as you said, like what the roster is going to look like. You're going to have a few things will open up for you. You're going to get your foreign player slots back.
Yeah.
You're going to have, you have time to, like you kind of said, you do need to like evaluate players. You do need to take those steps and figure out who you want to stick around. Because as as what happens in many other sports, it's like you got to rebuild, right? So you got to figure out who you want around for that rebuild, whose time it is to go. But also, you're kind of looking at too, with something that me and James did touch on last week as well, is like it's honestly, it's looking like it's going to be between Toronto, Dallas, and Chicago for that first overall pick. At the very least, it'll probably be a top 3 pick that the Toronto Arrows have in the draft. So your evaluation of who you would want to be taking with that top 3 pick, hopefully number, like as weird as it is to say, it's like you're going to end up in that weird, like that weird zone that all sports fans, especially those that have previously cheered for the Toronto Maple Leafs, end up in, where you're kind of like, you want to see the guys you're cheering for do well, but at the same time, you're also kind of like, a higher draft pick would also be nice. So like, that is definitely something that you're going to be looking forward to. The one thing though, that I think you were kind of saying, like, there's a couple things with this, is like, you were saying, it's like, oh, maybe you can get a win against like San Diego if they don't bring over a full power team. And I don't think that's the mindset that you should have going into this. It's like, especially you're looking at the Eastern Conference. Have you looked at the Eastern Conference standings? Did you have access to that in your Algonquin Park bunker?
Well, by talking about San Diego, I'm specifically talking about the Western Conference.
I know, but have you looked at the Eastern Conference standings? Because if you haven't realized, the Eastern Conference sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrible right now. Like, you have New England, who's clearly the best team. And if honestly, unless I hope, for New England's sake, I hope they don't follow suit with their fellow Boston sport teams and go and have an unreal regular season and then absolutely choke in the playoffs. But
didn't they do that last year?
New England, I was referring to the Boston Bruins, who just had historically the greatest NHL season of all time, only to lose to the Florida Panthers in the first round.
Hang on, I just want you. Can you repeat that again?
The Boston Bruins lost to the Florida Panthers in the first round.
Yeah, I know. I heard what you said. I just wanted you to say it again.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's great. But you know what? The one thing I wanted the Leafs to beat Boston, though. I got to admit, I wanted that to happen. But,
it's going to have to be another year. Right now.
But either way, like, you have New England, who's clearly the best team in the East, right? NOLA, who is sitting at 5-5, is second, right? And then you have 3 teams. So New York's played an extra game, so they're 4-6. We have 3 teams with 4 wins at a combination of 4-5 and 4-6, depending on how many games they played. If you're Toronto right now, right? One, maybe in the back of your head, I guess, if you're an athlete, it's like, hey, it's not over until it's over. So it's technically not completely out of reach. But also, don't worry about other teams and stuff in that, like, maybe are already in a different conference. But like, you still have games against Atlanta. You got games against Old Glory left. You got games against NOLA left. Go ruin someone else's year, right? Like, bring someone down with you. Like, if you're gonna go down, just reach. You know what? Like, it's like, you know, when you're at the pool party and someone tries to push somebody into the pool, right? Just reach back and grab them and bring them down with you, right? You can ruin. There's a lot of potential to ruin somebody else's year just because of how close the Eastern Conference is, right? And, you know, take pride in that ability to ruin someone else's year, and if from the player's point of view, let Tim Matthews worry about what the team will look like next year.
Yeah, but that's why I said an organizational point of view. I'm not saying that they're going to be whispering in the ear and saying like, hey, how many days left on your contract? How about you go on holiday early?
Yeah.
I mean that I don't see the Arrows making the playoffs.
They probably won't.
Irritatingly, they've already played New York twice, and again, I'll get to New York in a bit.
Ruined,
but it's against
NOLA still. NOLA at home.
They've got NOLA again. They've got
Atlanta
ATL again. They've got DC again, and then they got New England again. And I think the only Western opposition they have is against Houston and San Diego.
Yeah,
both of which are 2 teams that are currently in the playoff picture for the West.
But even for them, like, you could, like, again, just ruin, like, because Utah is right behind Houston and Seattle too, right? Like, you ruin, like, that's I think, like, Tim Matthews right now, yes, worry about next year, figure out what the team's going to look like and how you want to build. Because this will also be Tim Matthews' first full off season at the helm, right? Or so like he's going to get the ability to completely build the team in his image without worrying about anything that's left over before he got there, right? So he can do what he wants and build that. But for the players, if you're, and even like Pete Smith and you're the coaching staff, it's like, just go out and wreck someone else's year.
That's easier said than done, considering the track record the Arrows have this year.
That's what you got to play.
That's why I'm saying that when it gets to those final few games, you know, against Houston, against San Diego, against NOLA. So I feel like by, round 16, 17, we're starting to see which teams are definitely going to be in the playoffs.
Probably will.
And that's the thing. If you're San Diego, for example, and you get to round 16 and you have secured the the conference championship game, it's going to be held at Snapdragon Stadium, and you still have 2 games to go, one of which is in Toronto. Do you want to send over your best full-strength team to just breeze past them?
You know what?
Knowing that it won't change the result regardless of whatever happens.
You do. You know what? In all honesty, yes, you do. Because here's the one thing with that, and maybe from like an actual sports standpoint, you're probably correct. From an actual competition trying to win the league, the MLR needs to market. Dude, like none of these teams should be sitting out star players that other cities only get to see once. Like, especially San Diego, you have Nanu. Nanu should play. Like, everywhere. That's the biggest draw in the league.
True, but in the same way, there's a difference between starting Nanu and having Nanu come from the bench.
Yeah.
First of all, San Diego's team is obviously stacked.
No, Nanu's got to be 12. Nanu's 12. Play him. Like you should. Like this.
Would he be away doing coaching duties for?
Play him.
Other things. Or,
technically, you are right from a competition trying to win the league point of view.
Yeah,
you're right from that point of view. From a marketing, you're trying to sell the game point of view. Like this isn't the NBA where it's like you've achieved the max popularity. Like you're one of the biggest sports leagues on the continent. Like the Lakers can sit LeBron James and it's not going to cost them anything and stuff. If you're MLR, you got to have your biggest stars play because that's the draw, right? And it's like that's like
on paper, right yes, now, but you have to remember this also isn't a San Diego hosted game. That's I know. Mar Nonu is a San Diego player.
So it's a Toronto game though.
So why should San Diego boost Toronto's audience?
Because you're working together as a league. It's a single entity league. You want everybody to do well. It's like we're getting so far off track.
But absolutely.
One team will win a championship. All 12 teams have to sell tickets. Right.
Yeah.
But again, it's a single entity league, and all 12 teams should be helping everybody sell tickets, sharing best practices, doing things that can help. If you got star players, man, play star players. We're getting so sidetracked with this conversation. Okay. So I think we got to get back to like talking about the Arrows and the NOLA Gold game. Let's actually talk about the game that we're kind of maybe brought on to talk about.
To be honest, I think we have talked about the game. We've talked about we talked about the result. We've talked about the situation the Arrows are in. And I think the again, it's a saving grace that we said last time it happened. They're going into a bye week.
Yeah, which I mean, it's both good and bad, right? I mean, obviously, it's good in the sense that they get a break. They probably need the mental break, and they also they definitely need the physical break.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they can get some guys back from injuries. I mean, I think the one thing it's like, I think looking at this NOLA game, one of the things me and James were talking about the last couple of episodes was whether like the Arrows kind of being a Jekyll and Hyde team. And they played the king of Jekyll and Hyde teams in this game too, who definitely looked like a Jekyll and Hyde team in this game too. But I think like the Arrows are starting to feel more like, if we're going to use like classic literature characters and references, I think the Arrows to me are starting to feel more like a werewolf, where it's like
once in a blue moon.
Well, not so much even once in a blue moon, but they can be absolute monsters, and then you're just kind of waiting for the sun to come up. And the sun usually comes up around the 65th minute of the game.
Yeah.
Right. And this is another game where it's like it's another game, much like the game against Seattle last week. They had the game against Utah earlier in this year.
Yeah, they're competitive the first 40 to 60 minutes, and then
like the Arrows
it just slips.
Exactly. Like the Arrows could have, like, I don't want to say they could have won this game, because that kind of feels that saying there's a couple of games this year that me and James were talking about where like the Arrows maybe could have or should have won. I'm not sure if they could have or should have, but at the same time, I'm like, you were winning the game 5 minutes into the second half, which suggests that it's like you at least have a shot. And I mean, I think NOLA definitely controlled the territory possession, the pace of play. One of the Arrows early first half try was obviously Mitch Richardson with the pick on a incredibly lazy pass from NOLA lock there. But like he picked that off. That was a quick 7 points. Right. Richardson had a phenomenal game. I think Richardson's low key been one of the Arrows' best players over the last like 3 or 4 weeks. But I think so you have that. You obviously then you had Faleva get his try with the nice little Superman dive over the top. Right, which is great. And it's like the Arrows maybe were kind of being a little bit outplayed, but they were finding ways to hang around in the game. The set piece was really an issue for them, both in the sense that the lineout couldn't connect. The scrum was kind of on the back foot a little bit. Also, they had that one scrum penalty, just I think Salmon just arguing with the ref, right, which doesn't necessarily help. But it's like they were able to kind of hang around in this game, and then it's like you get to when did NOLA score 3 tries in the final 15 minutes? Or
yeah, from the 60th to the 70th.
Yeah, 61 to the 71st. Yeah, so you give up 3 tries in a 10-minute window, right? And that's the game.
Yeah,
like that's the game. Like outside of that, like 10 minutes, even after Jackson Hope's try in the 50th minute, right, to put NOLA back out in front, you're watching the game and you're just like, oh, okay, like the Arrows are still in this, right?
Yeah.
They're losing, but they're still in this. They've been right. But it's like, and it's another stretch, and there was a stretch, against Utah where they gave up a ton of points in the final 15 minutes, right? They gave up points in the final 15 minutes against Seattle too, because even that Seattle game, like that was close until Seattle decided it wasn't close. The Utah, right? And this felt like another game, much like the Utah game, that Seattle game, that it was like this game was close until NOLA decided that it wasn't close, right? And that's it feels like, especially like late in the game, and maybe there's like maybe it's because they haven't been able to pull out any like wins late, but maybe it's because they haven't been able to pull out any wins late, but like they seem like they get behind by like one try late in the game, and then try to maybe kind of do too much or overcompensate, or like, and then that one try quickly becomes 2 tries, 3 tries, 4 tries, and that's kind of been a problem.
Yeah, well, again, it's down to, I think, when you look at the players and who's in the starting line every time, and like we've obviously seen again with the game with Utah, there was like didn't even have a full bench for them to use.
Yeah. Oh no, there's been a whole lot of other issues. Yeah. Do you want to talk about additional curses that seem like they're coming up too? Should we get all superstitious? Because I think there's another curse that is slowly bubbling here that we maybe are ignoring for far too long.
Do you want to explain it?
Sure.
I'm not sure I'd word it correctly, so I'm leaving it to you.
Yeah. I am becoming, and I think this is probably growing because of my lifelong Leaf fandom and watching guys from Toronto absolutely light up the Toronto Maple Leafs over the past like 15 years. Yo, Canadians play better against the Toronto Arrows, right? Like, is this just me? Like, this is Eric Howard doesn't have a lot of tries this year. He scores a beauty. He plays great. NOLA wins. You literally, you have Andrew Coe Andrew Coe scoring tries. Every single Canadian player on the New England Free Jacks played the best game of the season against Toronto back in Toronto. DeWalt Coetzee scored a try, and the Dallas Jackals beat the Toronto Arrows. Literally every Canadian in the league plays the best game of their season against Toronto. Nakai Penny had like 19 tackles and like 45,000 breakdown arrivals.
And
Ronan Foley scored.
Then you have to look, what is the common denominator in all those scenarios? It's the Arrows.
Yeah, and Canadian
is what needs to be addressed. Anyway, I think we
addressed. You get up for your like against your favorite team, against your hometown team. Everybody gets up for that a little bit more, a little bit of a rival, or like you want to play well against your family and friends and stuff. Every Canadian though against the Arrows, it's becoming a little absurd.
Anyway, let's move on to the other games that took place. There's only a few games. It's this weekend just gone, and next weekend there's only 4 games going on. So it's a bit of an interesting decision made with the bye weeks, because we go from 2 weeks of 4 games to a week of 6 games, and then weeks 14 and 15 are the final bye weeks. So we end the season with 3 rounds of full complements. I'm not a schedule planner, but anyway, let's get into the games themselves. Starting off with the only Friday fixture.
Don't realize how hard it is to make a professional sports league schedule.
I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just intrigued by the decision making. Anyway,
it's hard.
Let's get into games. Seattle versus Dallas. Now, we all predicted who was going to win this, but it was the margin of how they won was quite big, because it seemed that Seattle scored and then they scored again. And I think they weren't happy with how they played against the Arrows last week. It took it far too long to get that try bonus point. They're like, we need to get this done as soon as possible. And I believe it was by the 30th minute mark, Reichert Hattinger had his second try, and, try bonus point done in the bag. Yes, Marcos Moroni had scored for Dallas, but as in you've gotten something out of it. You've reached a certain mark, and then probably told at halftime as well. It's like, guys, you're doing great, but we don't want to let up. We just want to add a bit more salt to the wound. Adrian Carlser, you were a Dallas Jackal earlier this season. You need to score a try against them, and obviously there was a bit of indiscipline from both sides. Like Jake Turnbull got yellow carded, Lucas Burr got yellow carded, Gomez Vara as well. And I think like 2 minutes after Burr, so Dallas were down to 13 men, which also helped Seattle pretty much. The final score: Seattle 61, Dallas 19.
Yeah.
And then
to DeWalt Coetzee, he was top 10 tackler, or had 10 tackles, top 5 for the Jackals in this game. So solid performance from him.
Yeah, you're going to have some Canadian positives here and there. Okay, and then we go from the highest scoring game of the weekend to the lowest scoring one. And so I'll put it like this, because it was very rainy for New England versus New York.
Just a bit, yeah.
So you go for the first half, your umbrella's inside out because of the wind, your coat's soaked. Balakana has got a try in the 6th minute, and Potros misses the conversion. And then eventually Potros gets a penalty, and just before halftime, and you're like, right, I've had enough of this. I'm cold, I'm wet, I need to go. I'll go home and I'll come back and I'll, be able to see like the last few minutes of the game if I'm lucky, you go out and you get stuck in traffic and you're like, oh my Lord, I'm going to miss the game. You get home, you change, you go back out, you traffic again. I'm only going to get there for the 80th minute. I'm going to have missed so much. And the score's still the same by the time you get back. Full score, New England 8, New York 0. And I did say I wanted to talk about New York, so I'm just going to briefly touch upon it because even though Ed Vidal was now back in the New York lineup, New York have gone through an equally long injury list as the Arrows. And the downside is that the Arrows injury list started in week 1, whilst New York started, I think, in like week 6 or 7. And as a result, they've been able to clock in like 4 wins, but now the losses are racking up. It is getting tough out there for the defending champions. So to put this in context, I believe that New York are playing. Yep, they're playing this coming week, and then they're taking a bye in week 14. But they are currently sitting 4th on 23 points. Yeah. DC is above them on 25. Atlanta is below them on 20, but they have played 1 fewer games than New York. So I believe, so for example, DC are playing Dallas and Atlanta are playing Chicago this weekend. Those are games in which ATL and DC can, easily win. And suddenly the defending champions will find themselves in 5th in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I say that as well. New York are playing NOLA, so can't be completely certain. But I mean, it isn't looking good for New York at the moment.
No, it's obviously they're dealing with their own issues and stuff too. I think for New York right now, though, it's like you said, they got a bye week in 2 weeks, but like if they can get healthy and stuff with how tight the Eastern Conference is outside of New England pulling away from everybody and Toronto maybe a little too far back. But like between NOLA, New York, between NOLA and New York and Atlanta, it's I'm forgetting somebody else, DC. Between those 4 teams, it's really close. So as long as you can kind of hang around, but it's obviously that's going to get a little bit tougher. Andrew Coe's been playing really well for them, especially in the absence of Ed Vidal. He had another pretty solid game racking up on.
We also have to remember Quinn Nwadi has been playing well.
Yeah, Nwadi's been very good. Yeah, he's been very good too.
And I will say that whilst New York do have their injury list and they are, they lost against DC, they lost against Houston, and obviously they just lost against the Free Jacks. But in those games against DC and Houston, they were still getting bonus points. They were still within touching distance, and that's been the difference, say, than Toronto, who have been, obviously the blowout loss to New England, but just being, needing an extra try against NOLA. And they could have had a losing bonus point, but as in, again, if New York's injury list had happened sooner, maybe we wouldn't be we'd be talking about them like we're talking about the Arrows at the moment. But
I think the other side of this game too, though, is like New England, clearly the best team in the East, but also showing that they can win games like multiple ways, right? Like they obviously had the we can score in bunches game against Toronto. They've had the we can just play like, if we got to deal with some weather, we can just play complete shutdown D, control, get into kicking battles, can try to play territory, play possession, and basically essentially hold a 5-0 lead for the first half and an 8-0 lead for the entire game, and that works. But they've also gotten into a couple high scoring affairs too, right? So they can they show that they can outpace teams, they can blow you out, they can completely blow you away, and they can also, get muddy in the trenches if they have to, right? And that's it's like they're clearly the class of the Eastern Conference right now in this game, even though maybe it's low scoring, maybe it's not the most exciting, because of the weather, but they're kind of showing that their team is incredibly versatile. And they also got Bodine Waka back, which Me and James joked about how Jason Potro should be ashamed of himself for missing 2 conversions against the Arrows, and limiting their record-breaking performance a little bit, only for New England to apparently take that joke way too seriously.
Yeah.
And sign Bodie Nwaka for until 2025 too. So that's not
good for them
to look at for the rest of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, well, we go from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference as we have the final game of the round, San Diego versus Houston, 2 teams within the playoff picture at the moment. And yeah, it seems as though Snapdragon Stadium is becoming the Snapdragon Fortress at this moment, because I don't believe the Legion have yet lost. And it were, I'll admit it was a pretty close encounter, going for, obviously San Diego got the jump pretty early on, and then Houston were able to get back into it. But in the second half, it was all San Diego as they closed out the weekend with a score of 29, Houston 16. Speaking of Houston and also New York as well, it has now been announced by Major League Rugby the sanctions posed against head coach Poe Human of Houston and the head of high performance Ollie Richardson for New York. They will each miss the next 6 games of the season, which will now be 5 after this weekend. They've also been sanctioned with unspecified fines, and they are to be donated to a charity of MLR's choosing, and both will have to perform community service.
What did you, we didn't even talk to you about this. What did you think of that whole incident?
A pretty crap slap to begin with. And then, from my experience with, martial arts and stuff like that, I know rugby is like a game of high testosterone and like, I have to prove how strong I am. I have to hit this tackle as hard as possible. As soon as someone like throws a punch, leave. It's not, I think you have to condition yourself of, especially when it gets into fights and stuff like that, is first of all, Human should never have gone on the field. He should have been shouting at like the match, like the side official at most. You never enter the field. You never throw hands, because this isn't the UFC or anything. You're not skilled in it. But it's always, when it comes to conflict, it's de-escalate, avoid, and then engage. And there was no at any point, neither Human nor Richardson had an effort to avoid or de-escalate. They were just like, must be man, must defend honor.
Escalating and avoiding conflict is not entertaining, though.
I don't care. I came here to watch rugby. If I wanted to watch fighting, and if I wanted to watch pathetic fighting, I would have watched WWE.
But what's wrong with WWE?
It's not fighting. It's scripted. It's scripted physical drama, and I do like it. But if I want to see a guy punch or hit a guy in the face, I'll watch professional. I would watch boxing. I'd watch UFC. That I don't want to see a non-fighter up against another non-fighter in a situation like it. It was, it was pretty. It was pathetic. It was embarrassing.
It was fun. Come on.
It's fun after the fact. In the moment, I'm like, Jesus Christ, how old are you?
I think the suspensions are pretty much. I think that the discipline is pretty much bang on, though. It seems like.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think.
I think the MOR honestly nailed this punishment.
I think the other thing that they should have done is have Human and Richardson individually issue a public apology for it. Because I want people, including people within MLR organizations as well as fans, especially children, to understand that these are the consequences you have to do in these sorts of scenarios.
I mean, I think
in the same way you don't want a parent to come onto the field when you're, when it's your kid's game. Then I don't want a coach to like be coming on and just being pointing at the ref and slapping opposition high performance directors.
I don't think that's going to necessarily lead to, people in club rugby or youth rugby like starting fights on the sidelines and stuff. But I don't know. I think It's kind of fun from an entertainment point of view. Obviously, you have to suspend them and punish them for it, and I think the league kind of actually nailed it.
Yeah, I think they
It's
got
going to be
I
tough
did
for
think
both,
they got the right balance,
especially for
all things
Houston. That's going to
considered.
be tough going through a playoff push. They're already 0-1 without your head coach.
Anyway, let's talk about Rugby Canada. News came out today. The men under 20s are to play 2 games in Uruguay. That'll be against the Uruguay under 20s on Tuesday, May 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and against Spain under 20 on Saturday, May 13th. The exact dates are to be confirmed. These games will act as a warm-up series to the series that they will play against USA under 20s. So Canada and USA under 20s will play 2 games. I believe they're both going to be held in the United States. It's not, surprisingly enough, at Rugby Town, USA, because I think the Super Rugby Americas series is still ongoing. Yeah, on June the 6th and 10th in Raleigh, North Carolina, 2-game series that will determine the North America berth for the 2023 World Rugby Under 20s Trophy. So the Under 20s team have been playing, limited games the past 2 years. They had that mini tournament against Chile, Zimbabwe, and the USA, I think, last year. So, with the return of the World Under 20s Trophy, both teams will be acting to enter that. And, playing some warm-up games, allowing the coaches to see what works, what doesn't. And, obviously thanks to Uruguay for being able to host this game. All right. And now the women's game. As we know, the Pacific 4 Series is coming not only to Canada, but to Ottawa on July 8th and 14th. And those tickets are now on sale for you to purchase from as little as $20 each. It's really good. And obviously we had the game, the men's game played against Spain at TD Place last year. If you go for July 8th, you get Australia versus USA, Canada versus New Zealand, as well as a free entry to a curtain raiser featuring Canada under-20 women's team playing the England under-20 women's team as well. And July 14th will be New Zealand versus USA, and concluding the tournament, Canada versus Australia. So, yeah. And if tickets purchased in a group of 10 plus will receive a 15% off discount. And you can use the promo code group15. And tickets are available at rugby.ca/en/tickets. Right. MLR round 12 predictions. We have 4 games again this weekend. The Arrows, of course, on a bye. So first, we have Atlanta versus Chicago. Derek, who do you have?
Atlanta.
I like how we're getting to the end of the season and we're like, okay, who can get the most points for the best differential at the end of the league?
As me and James discussed at length the last couple episodes, actually I was gonna say I just did this backwards because I was like the West absolutely destroys the East. Yeah, I'm gonna change this to Chicago. Why not? I'll go for an upset.
All right. Okay.
I'll change this to Chicago. Why not? We'll see how this goes.
Okay, well, we have another West versus East, Dallas versus DC. I'm going to go with DC. Derek, by your logic, are you going to go with Dallas?
There are still some outliers in the data. So I'll pick DC on this one.
All right, okay.
Although I did just pick a 1-8 team in the previous game to whatever. I can only pick 1-8 team based on this. So
okay. Well, the third game is entirely West, so it's Utah versus San Diego. Who do you have?
San Diego. They got to give you a reason to not pick them, right? So
that is fair logic. It's a return fixture from round 1. I'm just hoping the jerseys don't clash as much this time, but I'm going to go with San Diego as well. And the final one, which is an all-Eastern affair, so you can't use this West is better excuse. New York versus NOLA.
I mean, I think NOLA is kind of proven to be the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde team. They seem to play really well and then crap, and then play really well and then crap. So they won the last game. They played kind of good, I guess we didn't really talk about NOLA too much on the show, but so I think I'm going to go with New York just because it doesn't seem to follow NOLA's pattern.
Yeah, Nola, if you want us to talk about you more often, you have to have more Canadians on the team. I keep saying this. If you
Hey,
want us to talk about you,
they
you're gonna have.
they started Eric Howard, and look what happened. They
They
finally
started Eric Howard and they won the game.
and he scored a
And
try.
yeah, like this is the thing. This is why we're not picking Utah, is because they only have one Canadian.
And they barely.
Well, San Diego now has three Canadians to choose from. So, if you want us to feature you more on the podcast, you gotta have more Canadians in the squad.
Smith looked good in his first game back too. We didn't talk about that when you did your little recap, but
we can talk about him when he comes to Toronto. Like, he's going to be the selling point of that game. That's going to be the big one. Yeah. That's who we're going to see.
Bring Nanu with you.
And by your logic, anyone who plays Toronto, any Canadian who plays Toronto does their best. We're going to see him, threaten the captain jersey. Anyway, if you are looking to watch any of those MLR games, you can do so on the Rugby Network. We also have the return of the World 7 Series. This is going to be in Toulouse, the final round for the women, the penultimate round for the men. We've already said how Canada are going to be confirmed for that playoff tournament in London. But if you want to watch how they perform, you can watch that on CBC and CBC Gem. We also have the Premiership final rounds coming up, and we also have the URC quarterfinals, and you can watch those on Sportsnet. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces on our new website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We also have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast, as well as extra interviews with players and coaches. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We are also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can the fine people find you?
At Brissette the Jet across all social media networks.
All right, and you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me. Thank you for holding the fort whilst I've been away with James as well. Thank you for stepping in as a guest host. And thank you all for joining us for the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.